Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Good morning to those on Pacific time. Welcome to our webcast, Social Media Summit for Construction 2019, presented by the Construction Marketing Association. My name is Neil Brown. I'm chairman of CMA, and I will be a moderator and speaker today. And with me is our esteemed panelist and speaker, Kevin Hankey, who is a digital technology manager at Klein Tools and also a CMA board member. So before we get started, let's go over the agenda. And first of all, as I want to let you know that we have a hashtag for the event, Construction Social 19, so hashtag Construction Social 19, and we will be posting throughout the webcast and after, along with a summary follow-up blog as well. A couple of housekeeping notes here before I move on. First, this presentation will be available to all registrants and participants. And secondly, we have a Q&A section, which I'm going to mention in a second, but please use your GoToWebinar tool to ask questions early and often, as we will answer as many as possible and wrap up before the end of the hour. So please do ask your questions. The second item is that this webcast is possible because of sponsors. CMA sponsors include Nespro PPE, personal protective equipment, and Acumatica, which is an ERP software construction edition. So regarding the agenda, we will cover the report on the results of a national social media survey that we've been conducting for the last few months. And then I'll turn it over to Kevin Hankey, who is going to talk about his presentation is social media optimization. And as mentioned, questions and answers. And then finally, in this presentation that you will get a link to in the next 24 to 48 hours, and it will be on the CMA events page as well, will be a number of resources, relevant resources on social media that you can use. So with that, let's move on to the presentation. Again, our sponsors are Nespro PPE and Acumatica Construction Edition. Thank you. So let's go to this survey now that we've been running for going on 7 years. And the last few years, we have had 100% of our respondents share that they utilize social media. Maybe in the beginning of this survey 6 years ago, we still had some stragglers who were not involved in social media. So not much more to say about this, and no surprises here. So let's move on to a more meaty question. Do you manage social media marketing internally, or do you outsource it? With three options. The first, the majority manage social media internally at 64%. Only 9% outsource social media entirely. And lastly, 27%, almost a third, utilize some combination of both internal and outsourcing. So that is an interesting result. So let's talk about social networks that are utilized. Check all that apply in this case, and their percentages. So LinkedIn at 100%, along with Twitter and YouTube. I believe these were listed in the certainly not by largest percentage. So now Google Plus as most of us know, has been replaced. This is going on a year, but really 2 years. So not surprisingly, 0% using Google Plus at this point. Now, Instagram has been growing rapidly, as you know, a picture and video site. And so now a good portion, majority portion, 64% of our construction marketing respondents are using Instagram. And Pinterest, not so much. Snapchat is getting some usage. Houzz and forums rounding out the balance of the field here. So let's move on and answer the question, how have you utilized paid advertising on any social networks? And 64% have used Facebook, followed by 45% for LinkedIn and lesser percents on the other networks. Now we know that Facebook is extremely inexpensive to advertise, and certainly a portion of our respondents are consumer facing, whether they're home builders, remodelers, trade contractors that work for consumers. So not a surprise that Facebook advertising is being used, whereas LinkedIn is more of a B2B or a biz dev approach that advertising can support, and 45% of respondents use that. So that is, I would suggest, a growing, Facebook in particular being a growing area for social advertising. So a bit of an eye chart here, but please rank your social networks based on their effectiveness in achieving results. So we have green, or 1 being most effective, and 9 red being least effective. And we have most effective being Facebook and, well, really YouTube as number 1. Most effective in 40%, and that's followed by Facebook. And again, that reference for Google Plus being least effective, that it's no longer really being used by anyone. So that is ranked appropriately. So corresponding to this effectiveness is what are your top goals or objectives for using social media. Number 1 is your top objective, and number 4 being your least important objective. So the top objective is sales leads, followed by awareness and website traffic. And the last objective, 4, is led by improved search rankings. And then website traffic is kind of in the middle there with 54%. So these are the reasons that our respondents are using social media. And then the next question is even more meaty. What are the actual outcomes? So in this scenario, what are the real results? Number 1, top results, followed by number 4, least frequent results. So awareness leads the day in top results with 45%, followed by website traffic, and then sales leads. Whereas the least important objective is sales leads, realizing that it's difficult to achieve sales leads from social media. And then that's followed by improved search rankings with 36%. So again, I know that there's a lot here to digest, and this will all be available in the presentation for you to take your time on. So at this point, we're classifying the respondents, and so it's type of company or category that your company is in, and we've got a pretty rounded field here of equipment manufacturers, building materials manufacturers, no architectural engineering firms, but commercial contractors, home builders, remodelers, trade contractors, construction services, and then a bunch of consultants that would be like myself and maybe media agencies and things like that. So a good representation. And then finally, company size based on number of employees. So again, pretty broad here. We've got 1 to 10 and 250 to 1,000 employees being 27% respectively, and we've got some respondents that are 11 to 25 and 1,000 plus employees, and no one in the 26 to 100. So that's a reference to size, and so with that, I'm going to introduce my long-term colleague and truly an expert on all things digital marketing and web and social, Kevin Hankey.
Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning on the West Coast there. Happy to join you. I'm the Digital Technology Manager for Klein Tools. So excited to be back presenting with the Construction Marketing Association. Lots of things have changed since I remember my first presentation on social media for the CMA back in 2016. So we'll jump in, and with the variety of types of companies, goods and services, we'll try and make sure we apply to everybody in the audience here. So how do we optimize social media? Go ahead and click through to get the bullets. Well, we're going to talk through, or basically, one back, please. Sorry about that. 4 main areas to keep it simple. So we're going to talk about the different channels. Of course, all are different. We'll dig into that. What's the right channel? What's the best channel? What makes a fit? Then getting organized. Of course, everybody's busy, and there's a lot of things that are competing for our time. So how do we keep social media organized and create a content plan? And then for those of you who, certainly creating awareness and driving web traffic, we'll talk some about that, but also for those that go to the selling step, we'll talk about best practices there. And then ultimately the ultimate approach to test, learn, and optimize to, it's one of the best things about digital is you can do small trials and scale fairly quickly. So next slide, we'll go into the channel portion. So with the results hot off the presses, I took the 2018 look at this as far as networks used and effectiveness. Certainly, as things have gone, certainly there's a need for PR and getting the word out there. Traditional media is still alive and well, but social media serves as kind of a daily touch point and the main PR engine. One of the things that we continue to see is, even though we know Google owns YouTube, and Facebook owns Instagram, and Microsoft owns LinkedIn. Each one of these audiences, there tends not to be a lot of overlap, but we've seen across several industries. People have their favorite one, or in some cases two. Most people don't have time to keep up with multiple networks. So we'll talk a little bit about the implications of that, but each one of these audiences is fairly different. Next. So the other thing is making sure on your side is just as busy as your users are, that you can keep up with the content and comments. One of the things to keep in mind is one of the basics. Have your page. Your page is a representation. It's not like putting a website out there, but social is really a two-way conversation. So make sure that you can scale it Each platform, like Twitter turns over once every 20 minutes or so. So some people post 3 or 4 times in a day on a similar topic because that feed rolls pretty quickly. Versus something like a LinkedIn, a little less frequent posting. So you have to right size where your audience is at, and also how much content it takes. If you're not consistent with content, makes it difficult for your audience to build momentum and grow. Okay, click. One of the things learned here is certainly Facebook is a powerhouse for sure. And they're the most effective for B2B and B2C. Of course, there's slightly different approaches in there, specifically talking about construction. But, I'd also say don't underestimate the growth and the power of YouTube and Instagram. So talking a little bit about those two things, we see that a lot of people certainly do use YouTube. It's jumped up quite a bit from even last year. So now there's actually 100% usage. But what's great is we're seeing across the board that video as content as far as getting massive amounts of engagement over a regular post. Not that picture posts are bad, but video tends to dwarf the picture post. So YouTube is a great channel to create content. Think about creating both long form and short form content across the channels. Instagram's rolled out in ITV lately in the last year or so for you to do short forms and story form videos. So video is very flexible to reuse across platforms. So YouTube is a good hub for that to get a lot of use and purpose out of it. And of course, Instagram, the reason why that's continuing to be more successful, especially in construction, is it's a fairly easy platform. There's a lot of influencers in the construction market that are embracing it. It's fairly simple to snap a picture and then, type a quick message and put some hashtags. So we look at continued growth on that, where I expect Instagram now being at 64%, so it's edged slightly up. By next year, this time, I assume in the survey, it'll be up close to that 90 to 100% usage for the group.
And to your point on that, Kevin, just on Monday, Wall Street Journal announced that Instagram is going after business to business by offering a new product launch feature. So I don't know what that is yet, but it sounds B2B. So
yeah, so you'll be able to see more tools being built in to Instagram because there is good targeting, but it's a balance there, obviously, because some of the reason why users like Instagram is it's not as many commercialization, so it's a fine balance that you have to measure there. So that tends to make the Instagram audience user-generated content is a big item there. So let's go on to the next slide. We'll dive into there. So effective channels, we talked a little bit about this. Certainly agencies can do a good quick audit. And we talk about, basically, if you look at the different channels, one of the things to do, find where your audience is. And there's besides working with agencies, there's a quick fan page karma is a nice tool that you can use on trial to kind of evaluate, complementary or competitive brands. Where are people that are in your audience or similar companies? How's engagement? How often do they post? It gets down into some pretty good details. It's a good, quick competitive audit, but again, digging into agencies, and there's some other tools we'll talk about in a minute that help you manage that. Next. One of the other things that, usually it's at the bottom, even, it's moved up a little bit since we talked about it in the last several years, but forums are kind of an underrepresented area. Certainly people have blogs on their own sites, etc. But there are some forums that have, I'd say, built up a good audience and have, eyeballs. What's incredible is that they attract viewers on a daily basis. So a couple examples of these, Contractor Talk in our industry is certainly a good one. They also have, so they have branches that go off of that. Fine Home Building is one of the original forums for builders. There's also some for heavy equipment, et cetera. So these are open places not only to get some clear feedback, but, both of these sites allow advertisers. In the past, working at Bosch, we created one of the forums that we, wanted to be an open forum to hear feedback. It became the number 2 traffic driving source behind organic, and that was Be the Pro. So again, although it's great for driving traffic to your website and an excellent resource for research, it is somewhat time intensive, so you have to moderate, and there's a lot of pieces to running a forum. But the good news is you look at people like Contractor Talk, it's fairly easy. They've already got it up and running, and you can segment by the particular area that you're going after from a contractor standpoint. Okay, next slide. It's important, so we said, based on the amount of time that you have, to select a decent social media management tool for planning and monitoring. There's several out there. The 3 that I've had most experience with, you can look at Sprout Social, Khoros, which is basically Spreadfast. They were just merged together, and Hootsuite is widely used as well. So there's varying features, and you can build on top of it. So not only do they help you do analytics, I think probably Sprout is the best at analysis. Hootsuite and Khoros do a good job of kind of calendar management, and they have approval tools if you have a little larger organization that you can push through, and Sprout has some of that as well. But what that helps with is, try and spread your, although media is social, still needs a plan. You can get analytics that tell you what time of day and what day of the week most people are engaging with your content. So, the old elusive, impactful or viral post or video is not always easy to predict. Talking with all the, people in across Fortune 500 companies, some, similar great content takes off, and other times it doesn't go as well as you thought. So you're always tinkering with what the timing is, but certainly good to plan out your calendar and make it modular. Next bullet. And this is a case where each, as I was saying before, each platform is a little different. Twitter, you can post more frequently, but it's shorter form, of course, with the character limit. And they're talking about expanding it again as well. But obviously LinkedIn, you have a little bit more of a combination of the B2B audience, and you have established groups. So it's not so much about frequency as the quality of the content, but setting up a rhythm, just as you do if you're familiar with sending out, having an email plan. Same thing with social or banners on your website, is having a timing and tinkering with that with certain posts certainly helps hone it in and drive your metrics. Next bullet. All right, so one of the things that's it, yep. One of the things to think about is, certainly social media, there's platforms that are a little more personal, like, Facebook tends to be more, certainly a juggernaut for being able to reach out and target to people. But, as a business, you have to put content out there, which is really the sweet spot is, your audience is interested in a lot of stuff, and you're an expert in a lot of stuff. But really the sweet spot that, works is that, where does your authority meet the audience interest? And that's what's important. So although we might be big fans of, March Madness or the latest, college football game coming up, and our audience loves that, we're not necessarily the authority for things like that. And although Klein Tools can talk to you a lot about, logistics and, our shareholders and some of those behind the scenes things, not so many of our, audience necessarily cares about that. There's times and places or targeted audiences that might make sense, but really that sweet spot is, where your audience has a need, and you have authority or expertise. And so we found over and over again, rather than trying to jump on the latest fad, or, not to say that you can't jump on National Hot Dog Day, but, if it ties into a user event, that's fine. But if it's not an authoritative topic, then, it's better to steer clear, even if it's entertaining or funny, but just gives you that authority. Okay, next slide. So again, as we talked about, avoid commentary and items you don't have relevance on, despite how popular they are. And really it's important in those areas that are in the sweet spot, find the 5 or 6 key topics. One for us is the skilled trades gap. Of course, that's big across the construction industry. We actually have a lot of programs that we've rolled out over the last several years, including National Signing Day to elevate people coming out of high school that are actually jumping into the trades. And so that's something where we have programs and relevance to talk about it. So that's an area of focus for us. But find your 5 or 6 and, make sure you post consistently on those relevant topics. Next slide. All right, so we talked a little bit about, when we look at content, of course, all social media platforms are some kind of image or video and a little bit of text, of course. So one of the things we found in our analysis, you can see, examples here across 3 different platforms. The one on the left on Instagram is basically a user generated video that we reposted. And it's basically got the highest amount of impressions out of all the posts that we've done. So what's common with the first 2 is they're both video. We see video getting high engagement because it's a quick education or a great way to show off your product, especially if it's, it tends to be more authentic, that the user is doing it not necessarily in an advertising type of way, but they're speaking the common contractor lingo that everybody understands. So from the audience to the audience, that authenticity really drives those impressions. So reposting should be a big part of your campaigns and your programs. Next bullet. So as we talked about, video gets increasingly higher engagement. So although probably, 8 out of 10 of our posts are still images, and they're easier, somewhat easy to manage, video is morphing. You'll see that, kind of ratio change over the next year or so pretty radically again, because, it is the videos that are getting a lot more views, a lot higher engagement. So the second one with YouTube, this was a video that was actually shot a few years ago. It's still our highest ranking video for impressions so far this year. People love how-to and kind of the instructional videos, but video is a great format for that type of thing. Any kind of demo, whether it's from yourself or a user. Again, not necessarily, here's a case where that one's a little longer form, a few minutes, versus, you're seeing a lot more on Instagram, the 15 to 20 seconds. And really the best influencers don't even really talk much when they're showing it off. If you've got a product that has a known difference, the people in the know that have a use for it will pick up on it right away. And those are the things that make me seem boring to somebody who doesn't know that market, tools or equipment. But for those that do, they get excited about it. Next bullet. So, we've kind of done this full analysis, like I said, days a week, weeks a month. We've looked at the competitor landscape and what they're doing. And we've made our adjustments based on all that stuff. But one of the things that stands out is there's no one single way of tactics to say just do this. We found that variety is good. So, demos and videos certainly are big, but, how-tos are important. Polls and promos also are in our top 10 for a lot of the posts that we have. So you can see the one on the right, certainly we encourage, that's still user-generated content. That's a big thing. But, people send us in their tool bags or their tool collections. It's become one of our more popular features on Facebook and Instagram. So, a lot there, but, don't abandon every other format, but, certainly user-generated content and video tend to be the items that, to emphasize here. And also with that second one with YouTube is once you put something out there, doesn't mean, even though as marketers we're moving on to the next thing and the next thing, but, if it's a good video, it'll continue to draw in users and interest and awareness. Next slide, please. All right, so for those of you that are, looking, for that percentage that want to get leads or start focusing in on selling, so they'll say if you're not selling, you still want some kind of conversion prior to sale, which would be, we use page views. So that's probably the most important thing is, social's great, but use that to drive them to either your category or product page so that you can kind of get them in that loop. Everybody's pretty much emphasized that the funnel has been obliterated, so you can kind of measure funnel analytics and kind of interpret signs, but people are kind of moving in different ways, and unless you measure specific things, which we'll get into in a little bit, it doesn't work the way it did, let's say, even a year or two before. So on the social selling, it's actually easier than ever, but things change frequently, for sure. I'm kind of lumping in Google into this a little bit. One of the tips or tricks there is certainly if you have product to sell, certainly linking your Google Analytics with your website, with YouTube, and with your Merchant Center for shopping gives you a lot of a variety of both data and options to get your ads out there. That's fairly easy to run, similar to Facebook. Next bullet. So, as I said, go to the, hook up your merchant profile. You can basically list your products. That's the image on the left. The other thing that I would say is if you're doing any kind of Facebook advertising at all, ideally you kind of want to pull everything together in one place. And Facebook Business Manager is an excellent tool for that. It allows you to link your pixels, create your stores, measure your analytics, tie into your ads, change your settings. So not enough time here to talk about all the things you can do, but certainly is highly recommended to, get a business account, link your Instagram even as well. It's much easier to manage, review ad activity, and track results. So that's definitely something that's highly recommended. Also on a Facebook page itself, there's a couple options. Certainly for our general site, we do most of our business through distribution with our partners like Home Depot and our longtime relationships with electrical distributors. Basically, you could link your Facebook back to your site. If you do have an e-com site, they can go there to shop. It's another way to drive people from social to there. Again, the goal mainly with social selling is to drive them to a product page that has buy now. One of the advancements in the last couple of years is really the ability for social. They're kind of hopping in the e-commerce game. So Facebook and Instagram, you can sell direct through catalogs, or now with the last 6 months, they finished their test with Instagram that people can sell directly from Instagram. So that can link to your basically your e-commerce site, or you can manage that through the Facebook Business Manager. But basically allows them to kind of skip over that product page, click on the item that they want, and basically place the order right there. So you're basically skipping a step. Kind of early to see results on which one is better than the other, but basically if you're interested in testing out Instagram shopping, you have to set up a business manager, put a catalog together in Facebook, and then ultimately link those together and apply for Instagram shopping. So it's just interesting. Of course, you're trying to reduce friction, and if you're selling goods, it's a nice new thing to test. It'll be interesting to see how that goes over the next couple of years for our industry. Okay, next. So as we said, Business Manager on the Facebook side and Instagram really ties all your assets together. It also allows you, if you do, for the percentage that has a blended mix of in-house and, consultant help, it gives a decent way to, stay on top for both sides to look at what's going on the page. All right. Next slide, please. Oh, one last point, I guess, I highlighted it, drive traffic to specific pages. So again, going back on whether you're, the two main branches, I would say, are awareness and conversion. Usually, conversion as close as you can get to selling, the better. But like I said, if your goal is to drive more traffic, or one of the things we measure is, how much social traffic and which channels are driving, how much traffic to what page, looking at social media in Google Analytics. So those are things to keep in mind. Analytics is another powerful tool that, allows you to kind of see where customers are coming from. And then, of course, they've expanded their e-commerce capabilities and measurements. So if you do have e-commerce on your site or in social, then it would give you an overview of what that allows. Okay, next slide, please. So, just at the Midwest e-commerce conference, for marketers, it's not surprising. A lot of people, I actually heard an ad for DuckDuckGo yesterday, ironically served up to me on my phone through Google. So, but they're talking about how creepy it is that Facebook and Google have your information. So, there's good and bad to it. I guess I would say, as an industry, the goal here is to provide value. So certainly, if you look at advertising dollars spent, if you think about for every dollar, basically Amazon's really growing leaps and bounds, but for advertising dollars spent, for every $1 in Amazon, there's $3 spent on the Facebook platform and $5 on a Google platform, which would be Google Ads, YouTube, shopping, etc. So that kind of gives you an idea. Those are really the big three. The benefit about that is certainly that you get more data, and certainly, with the concerns GDPR and CCPA in California, and now which basically gets enacted, at the beginning of next year. But there's a Utah um, legislation that starts basically in the next month or so. So keep your eye on privacy, I guess I would say. So it's a balance. You want to take the data that people opt into and try and use to your best benefit. Facebook and LinkedIn have excellent, you install the pixels and create events. They can help you target the audience by behavior. So, for instance, if they hit a certain page or they do, they get so far in the e-commerce process, then you can try and target those people more specifically than just kind of rifle shot out there to everybody in general. You still always need to try and grab a new audience, but you're not always selling to everybody. I would say, again, we kind of break it into awareness and conversion. If it's awareness, you're basically driving them to the home page or a category page. And then you'll see a lot with that is, identify what stage your customer's in and what type of content they get. So some blog articles might be more about talking about a category, like how do you pick the right, nut driver for your application versus, this particular nut driver set covers all these needs. So the first one's more of a consideration and the second one's more of a conversion. So as you're doing your ad, just keep that in mind as you're targeting your audiences. I would say, again, bringing in Google Ads, because Google, although not necessarily a social network, but you have YouTube tied to that. And analytics, as I mentioned, are important to measure how inbound traffic is coming from your social pages, and basically what are they doing once they go from your page. What pages are they hitting, and how long do they stay, and are they actually doing what you would hope they would do down through the funnel. And then really a couple things to be aware of. So certainly dynamic ads and targeting are getting very good, but again, this requires that you have good data, garbage in, garbage out. That hasn't changed in years, but it's especially important. We were talking to Google this morning, and certainly, one of the things that both Google and Facebook had started talking about is basically smart ads. So two of the newer trends are smart ads, which they're asking you to run their algorithm to do targeting. So basically, you tell them the goals, you give them a behavior as a leading indicator, and then they optimize it for you. So rather than spending hours tinkering with small pieces of the program, so what we're doing in this case is running the smart AI that both have, and then kind of running an A/B test in comparison with the changes or the tweaks that we do on a daily basis. All right, Neil, you okay over there? I don't want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
All right. One of the other things I would say, kind of closing up the ads part of it, is dynamic ads. It's very simple to do, and more platforms are doing that. Basically, you can list 3 or 4 pictures and 5 or 6 or multiple headlines, and it basically cycles through and does the A/B test automatically for you, and then optimizes for the more popular ones. So continue to look for more AI automation where these companies are trying to optimize. Of course, they want you to be successful, so you spend more advertising dollars with them. So certainly, you start spending advertising dollars, you'll get calls from Facebook and Google to help you optimize your campaigns, which is good for everybody. Ultimately, you're just trying to be successful. One of the other things I would say, data, test, learn, optimize, like we said, it's the mantra I believed in for a long time. In construction terms, measure twice, cut once, measure again. Digital is always growing. certainly as many dashboards as you can get, I would recommend. Analytics is great. If you have somebody, ideally, in today's day and age, you need some kind of analyst that helps you make data-based marketing decisions. Google Data Studio is actually a free tool on top of analytics that allows you to present reports. We use it for our monthly reports here, where we tie into the actual data, and it gives you nice charts and graphs that summarize things. So that's what we found as a good tool. One of the other things, I guess, talking to my colleagues yesterday at the e-commerce conference, we talked a little bit about the big three. Google gives you a little bit more of a look behind the curtain and understanding all your data. Certainly Facebook allows you to understand and track your pixels to see what's working and what's not working. Amazon, they're a little bit more closed off in sharing data, but there is a new attribution trial going on right now with Amazon data if you're running Amazon ads. So the expectation is that that'll be rolling out of beta probably by the beginning of next year. And some of you might have noticed some changes if you follow the industry news, or if you actually read those boring Facebook notifications. But they've recently they got called out on their metrics on video views, so you'll notice those have changed this month because autoplay misrepresented basically what the views were. So just be aware. I guess I would say, if somebody's giving you metrics that only they are verifying, this is why I like to tie systems together, like viewing social within Google Analytics, because at least we can see what result is happening. Are they actually going in? What pages are they viewing? And from a commerce standpoint, did it lead to a conversion? So typically those leading end metrics, take with a grain of salt. Certainly awareness is great, and that's the top end of the funnel when you need it. But these days, I think smart partners of marketing understand that that's just the beginning of the conversation, and it's actually, are you, moving metrics or KPIs forward that help sell. So with that, the final thing, like I said, set your KPIs accordingly. You don't need to measure a ton of things. You certainly can review with your management to kind of do some education and, what you should be looking at, and help set your the metrics that they get interested in. But awareness is really, not so much about anything else but engagement. Certainly how frequently you post. All these are behind the scenes stuff. You should be looking at a lot of metrics, but the number one we use with management is engagement and likes. Of course, it's likes will tend to be measured less going forward. There's some potential changes in Instagram with that are rumored. So ultimately, you want your users that's where engagement is really what you're driving for if it's about awareness. And then from the conversion side, of course, it's the basic selling funnel. Sales being number one, add to cart. If there's abandonment, how do you go circle back and reduce that? And then you could get pretty granular and look at what's the conversion rate by source. So, Google allows you to do it fairly anonymously. Of course, there's, Adobe has some nice tools and suites. Salesforce I've worked with as well with Pardot that gives you good pixeling and tracking. That you can actually build and see funnels and build drip campaigns and follow up. So use the tools that you have, but explain them to management in a simple way. If you look at the difference between print advertising and digital advertising today, it's really two different worlds. So, as a traditional marketer, people have to, understand a little bit about what the capabilities and honestly the shortcomings are for digital. So there's good expectations, but that's where I find analytics help hone in and provide good feedback for management on what's actually happening. So, been fortunate to have good supportive management here, and they also, anybody can view your content, so they're very avid followers, which is great. And we're working on with HR to get more of the culture story out there on LinkedIn, for instance. So, what you put out there is out there. Certainly you can take things down, but having a good plan, tying the analytics together and test, learn, optimize. So that's my presentation, and thanks for your time today, and look forward to answering any questions that you have.
Great. Well, Kevin, thank you. And that conference must have had some heavy information there, because you injected some of it today, which was the e-commerce part of social media. The downstream results was fascinating. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
As mentioned prior, please utilize your GoToWebinar tool to pose any questions. And with that, we've got a couple coming in here. And so I will pose this first one to Kevin Hankey. What is your favorite social media network and why?
Well, I really like LinkedIn and how it's structured. I think it's clear that that's business oriented, and for me personally, it's great for networking. I certainly have I'm an open networker, so a lot of people jump on, but I've met some new potential partners, whether they're a vendor or someone I want to do business with. And then from an advertising side, it's got as good a targeting, down to, what trade associations they belong to, et cetera. I really enjoy LinkedIn, and we put programs together with, some of our direct sellers at a couple companies to, have corporate post LinkedIn info, but have those outside sellers, kind of amplify, and they own the network. They build a network with those key customers that you have. So it takes a little bit of extra effort, but, coordinating your sales team with, what you're doing on LinkedIn as a platform. In the past, we've seen that along with go-to-meeting seminars on certain hot topics, drive a lot of leads and make connections with big companies that needed our services. So LinkedIn's my favorite.
Excellent. And I'll just comment briefly. I would say YouTube is my favorite. YouTube, some have called the second largest search engine in the world, even though it's clearly a video channel, but it is owned by Google. And there is every video has a title and a description that is pure meta code that are the building blocks for SEO. And so YouTube videos rank quite high for a given keyword, and so building if you want to rank for keywords, building video libraries around those keywords can impact that, of course, with quality content as well. So another question for Kevin, should B2B brands use Instagram, which has traditionally been more consumer-oriented?
Yeah, I think, ironically, it has a similar or maybe even more so reputation as Facebook. But, like I said, tracking Instagram for the past, 6 or 7 years or so, the construction industry has embraced it. I think the hashtags are certainly, one of the interesting things happening there is you see a lot of, contractors building their own channels up, following each other, getting followers from others. definitely pleasant surprise to see that many contractors out there. It does give you an opportunity to, connect in a sense one-on-one. We've built relationships with a lot of these contractors. Some, that you would say are kind of burgeoning influencers, and others that have built up quite a large audience. But Instagram, I think for the user, like I said, is quick, easy to search. From managing it, searching hashtags and what people are talking about. Certainly it's they're talking about all subjects. So it's not, not everything out there is relevant, but you'll see, quite a few people as you get a presence. As I mentioned, user-generated content for us reposting out there gets more views than any other platform. Altogether, that we know we're very targeted to construction.
Excellent. So one last question. We're running to the top of the hour here, and I don't want to keep folks. Social media, of course, is always changing and new things happening. Kevin, what do you think is the next big thing in social media?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think, your both web, email, any digital, privacy is kind of the big push probably the last year or two. I think social media with advertising is, Facebook tinkers with the ad model, with Instagram. It's going to be interesting to see how people, interact and what platforms succeed and which ones dwindle. So we saw the quick demise of Google Plus. YouTube, as you said, is a big juggernaut. So I think it'll be interesting to see if there's any challengers as the generations change. We have a Snapchat presence, so we've kind of kept our eye on it, but it's not quite in our wheelhouse yet. Pinterest is kind of interesting to watch. Certainly people are, there are more, construction companies out there, but it hasn't reached a critical mass yet. So we expect to see kind of the granularity of data, privacy to intersect and redefine how we target in ad platforms. You see more automation. That's probably the biggest thing coming in the next, hitting now and over the next 6 months, is really how people are targeted by algorithms run by the platform. So that's probably the next biggest thing.
We did get a late question in here, Kevin, that is similar to our Instagram question for B2B brands, and this question is in regarding using Facebook as a B2B social strategy. What are your quick thoughts about that?
Yeah, we've always had success as a B2B brand. I think it's, just understand that you're a brand, and Facebook is, and Instagram have designed separate kind of profiles and rules for brands to be out there. It's still the most successful, I think, advertising platform for construction marketers. Use it to answer questions that people have about your company. Just be aware that they'll, hit you up there more than on the phone, and it's more public. So have a plan for that. And then I think, understand what people want to see, speaking to relevancy. Certainly there's plenty of people that, walk the line between what's private. I use LinkedIn more for professional and Facebook for private, but I do still get presented things. Some people that may bother on Facebook. To me it doesn't. If it's interesting, I'll click through. If it's not, leave it alone, right? So there definitely, the results have spoken that there are plenty of businesses in B2B that are succeeding on Facebook. You just have to, make sure you're keep it professional, target the right audience. You're not going out necessarily after friends and family. You're going after relevant audiences. And this is where the combination of ads and organic can help you build that audience the right way.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. As always, very, very insightful. So to wrap it up here, a few things to share with you. Just an overview of Construction Marketing Association, CMA, focused on marketing for construction-related products and services, providing resources, a career center. We have a professional marketing certification program and marketing services as well. You can find us at our website and our award-winning blog. We have a LinkedIn group as well. And there is our Career Center. Again, you can get this information later. Our next webcast is November 7th on content marketing. And in the appendix of this presentation are several resources. The first that I want to bring to your attention, again, we've been talking about this presentation deck today, will be available on the CMA events page and also as a follow-up to participants, an email follow-up. If you'd like to look at the 2018 presentation that Kevin referenced, this links to that as well. Again, that's on the events page. And then a couple of blogs from CMA using social for recruitment, and then leveraging LinkedIn groups to build your network. So finally, we have some self-improvement resources from CMA. I mentioned the Certified Construction Marketing Professional Program. We have a book called Tools of the Trade, Modern Marketing for Construction Brands, and finally that Career Center that we reference. Finally, in this presentation deck are bios of both myself and Kevin, and with that I'd like to thank everyone for participating and welcome you to participate in the future. Go to our resources page where we have a number of white papers, guides, and case studies available. And thank you again, and thank you, Mr. Hankey.
Thank you.